I researched verb production in people with aphasia, and I'll be talking about verb network strengthening treatment. I used the Darley definition for aphasia. In order for aphasia to be present, brain damage must occur. There must be deficits in all four modalities of verbal language, although these may vary in severity. The primary deficit must be with words and cannot be explained by any other deficit. And lastly, this problem with words will present as a reduced availability, efficiency, or auditory retention span of words. Anomia is a problem with all content words, including nouns and verbs. However, people with non-fluent aphasia have a much harder time with verbs than they do with nouns. The type of verb also makes a difference. Transitive verbs such as write are easier than intransitive verbs such as yawn. A verb is transitive when it requires an object. And as we know, verbs play a pivotal role in connected speech. So Lisa Edmonds is the primary researcher behind this treatment. It's a remediation approach. And verb network strengthening treatment is a semantic treatment which seeks to improve lexical retrieval of words through the conceptual connection between verbs and thematic roles. And thematic roles are just the agents or doer of the action and patients, receiver of an action that surrounds a verb. We know that semantic association is oftentimes a strategy used by people with aphasia. This is evident in instances of semantic paraphasias. The theoretical premise behind this approach is that semantic verb networks act as neural networks, and these strengthen through repeated activation and use. Verb network strengthening treatment adopted the verb as core treatment for improving sentence production. The verb is central because it not only links the agent and patient, but it also specifies their relationship. This treatment also implements that a verb is dependent on its thematic roles. That is, verbs prime typical agents, patients, and instruments, and vice versa. I have some examples listed here for you. Also, by increasing word specificity, people with aphasia can become more efficient and effective communicators. And lastly, training verbs by creating networks reinforces subject-verb-object structure, which fosters sentence production. Here's an image of a verb thematic network taken from one of Edmonds' studies. Researchers selected verb pairs and possible agent pairs. Verb pairs were rated on their level of semantic relatedness, and agent-patient pairs were rated on their typicality. This first study included 4 participants with moderate aphasia, 2 fluent and 2 non-fluent. Researchers developed termination criteria to determine when to end treatment, and all 4 participants in this study met the criteria by 4 weeks. Researchers wanted to know if treatment would generalize to SVO utterances, incorporating trained and untrained verbs. They wanted to see if treatment effects were maintained and if verbs not directly related to treatment improved. There was evidence of generalization for both trained and untrained verbs in sentence production. All participants showed some level of maintenance. Naming and sentence production tasks displayed improvements in retrieval of nouns and verbs. And lastly, 3 of the 4 participants produced more complete utterances. So this preliminary study showed pretty promising generalization capabilities for lexical retrieval skills in this population. Next, researchers wanted to study the treatment effects for a more severe population. 2 participants with moderate to severe Broca's aphasia were selected, and as expected, baseline treatment phases lasted longer than the previous study in order for participants to meet termination criteria. Treatment lasted 15 weeks for participant 1 and 12 weeks for participant 2. Researchers were interested in the magnitude of change on probe sentences containing trained and untrained verbs from baseline to post-treatment, and also for maintenance for up to 5 months later. Researchers also wanted to know if there would be improvements in naming, sentence production, correct information units, and functional communication. So participant 1 showed generalization of trained verbs only, whereas participant 2 showed trained and untrained verb generalization. Participant 1 improved in naming nouns, whereas participant 2 improved in both naming verbs and nouns. Both improved their Western Aphasia Battery scores, lengthened their utterances, and were deemed more functional communicators by themselves and a caretaker. It's important to know that participant 2 used writing when she couldn't verbalize to select agent-patient pairs and responded to half of the weekly probes in writing. Also, due to participant 1's underwhelming outcomes, Step 2 of treatment was modified so that participant 2 repeated the verb aloud. And I'll get into the steps in a little bit. The final study included a group of 11 participants with a variety of aphasia classifications. The study did not have a termination criteria. Instead, treatment lasted for a total of 10 weeks, training 1 verb per week. Researchers wanted to know if the changes made to treatment protocol resulted in significant group improvement. They were also interested in lexical retrieval improvements. And lastly, they wondered if there would be significant changes in discourse and functional communication abilities. There was not a significant difference in sentence production, but there was a significant group improvement in picture description tasks, noun and verb naming accuracy, percentage of complete utterances, and 7 of the 11 participants showed clinically significant improvement on post-treatment measures for aphasia. Overall, treatment made a positive impact for participants. Researchers took a more in-depth look at the previous 11 participants. They wanted to look at the individual sentence impairments before and after treatment, just to help understand the different linguistic variables that impact generalization. What they found was there's a wide variety of people who were able to generalize skills. Participants improved on lexical retrieval the most also. So participants generate agents and patients themselves. By doing this, they produce diverse schemas related to trained verbs, which promotes activation to untrained verbs. No pictures are used in this therapy. This means that participants must retrieve their own representations. Participants answer WH questions in a way that doesn't limit them, such as a picture description task might. And syntactic elements are embedded. So training verbs and syntax together has the potential to create stronger neural networks, stronger neural pathways between a verb network and sentence structure. So the preferred material for this would be blank index cards. And you'll also want to have cards with the W questions. And you want to select a variety of verbs beforehand, so much as 30 to 50, and you want to make sure that they're all appropriate for treatment. And then along with the client, you'll choose 10 verbs specifically to train. First step, you want to place the who and what cards down with the verb in the middle. So let's say the verb is drive. You would pose the question, who might drive someone or drive something? You write the responses down and place them in the corresponding columns. We want the client to generate 3 to 4 agent-patient pairs. Again, only semantic cues are used in this treatment. If they need it, have foils prepared and make the client have a choice of 4 possible words. Next, have the client read their responses aloud. If needed, do choral reading or have them repeat after you. Next, the client picks one response to expand on and will answer WH questions: where, why, and when. If the client does not understand one of the WH questions, provide a forced decision. So, for instance, if they're having trouble with the question where, you can ask, does your dad drive a boat in the lake or on a football field? Afterwards, the client reads the responses aloud. Next, the clinician reads aloud 12 sentences that they make up, and the client decides if they're semantically correct. So these 12 sentences are made up of correct target sentences, sentences with inappropriate agents, inappropriate patients, and thematic reversals. Also, the level of difficulty can be increased by asking the client to identify the incorrect word. In step 5, the client is simply asked what verb they're working on. It gives them another opportunity to recall the trained verb independently. And in step 6, you repeat step 1 without any visual cues. So you remove all of the WH question cards and the verb cards and the patient and agent cards, and you simply just ask them questions. So here's a picture of the treatment protocol at a glance, steps 1 through 6, and then here's the form you can use while giving treatment. Thank you.